So today we're going to pick up back up in John chapter 6, and we're going to be talking about one of my favorite miracles that Jesus did. This miracle is the feeding of the 5,000. Have anybody heard it before? Yes, some people? Okay. And the really interesting part about this miracle and this story is it's literally mentioned in all four Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And if you know, back in the day, they were very selective on what they mentioned because they didn't have a lot of time to mention everything that Jesus did and everybody that Jesus healed and every miracle that Jesus performed. And the reason is because if they did, we wouldn't even have enough books to put all of them in. That's what John says. We wouldn't have enough books in the world to put everything that Jesus did. And so they were very selective of what they mentioned. And they all decided they wanted to mention this specific story. And I think it's because it's extremely important and it's extremely powerful. So let's open our Bibles to John chapter 6, starting at verse 1. And if you don't have a Bible with you, that's totally fine. You could just look on the screen, or you could just listen to me reading. After these things, Jesus went over the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias. Then a great multitude followed him because they saw his signs which he performed on those who were deceased. And Jesus went up the mountain, and there he sat with his disciples. Now the Passover, a feast of the Jews, was near. Then Jesus lifted up his eyes, and seeing a great multitude coming towards him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread that these may eat?" But this he has said to test him, for he himself knew that he would do what he would do. Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may have a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a lad here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish, but what are they among so many?" Then Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down, in number about 5,000. And Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to the disciples, and the disciples to those sitting down, and likewise of the fish, as much as they wanted. So when they were filled, he said to his disciples, "Gather up the fragments that remain, so nothing is lost." Therefore, they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves, which were left over by those who had eaten. Then those men, when they had seen the sign that Jesus did, said, "This is truly the prophet who is to come into the world." So let's back up a little bit. What is going on here? Okay, a little bit backstory. Let's pick up from last week. So basically, Jesus goes into Jerusalem and for the Jewish holiday. We don't know exactly which one, but it's a Jewish holiday. And he goes to this pool of Bethsaida, which is in Jerusalem next to the temple. And there is this man that's laying there for 38 years, and he can't move or walk. And Jesus heals him. And then Jesus walks to the temple, because the pool is really close to the temple, where like it's within walking distance. He walks in the temple, and in the temple he starts talking to the Jews, and the Pharisees started to harass him, and they are planning to kill him. So Jesus, that's what we talked about last week, talks to them and says, "Hey, I'm equal with God. Like my Father and I are one." And they get really angry and start to get even worse. And then Jesus goes to Galilee. The Galilee, that's where it picks up here in chapter 6, that Jesus now is going from Jerusalem in Judea and going all the way to the region of Galilee. And depending on which holiday it is mentioned in chapter 5, it could have been 1 year, guys. Like it could have been 1 year from the healing of this man, the laying around the pool, all the way to Jesus going to the Sea of Galilee. Or it could have been 6 months. It just depends on which holiday it is. If it was the Passover, it would have been 1 year. And if it's the Feast of Tabernacles, it would have been 6 months. So I'm just letting you know it's not like the next day he went over. So he goes to the Sea of Galilee. And why does he go to Galilee? 2 reasons. One is because he's trying to run away from these people trying to kill him. These leaders are trying to kill him. And second, because he wants to do amazing ministry in Galilee. That's why he's there. So if we want to put in the video, I have a video of the Sea of Galilee when I was in Israel, and I just want to share it with everybody.
Sea of Galilee.
It's not
This
playing.
is where Jesus walked on water. This is the Sea of Galilee. This is where Jesus walked on water.
Okay, we can stop there. Well, it didn't go as planned. It didn't go as planned, but it's still the Sea of Galilee, and it's about the Sea of Galilee, not my voice or the technical issues. But basically, as you can see, it's beautiful. It's just as beautiful as when Jesus was there. It's clear. You could totally see through it. There's small, tiny fish. There's rocks. It's clean. It's just amazing. And so Jesus goes there. By the way, that's the same sea that Peter and his brother and a bunch of the disciples were fishing in. That's the same sea that Jesus walked on water. A lot of his ministry was around that Sea of Galilee. And so this is what Jesus does. He's next to the Sea of Galilee, and he gets in a boat with his disciples, and he goes to the other side. Like he literally goes from one area to another. And why does he cross over? Why does he cross over? It's because that same day they just got back. It doesn't talk about it in chapter 6. That's why I'm telling you the backstory, so you know what's happening. Right before what we just read, Jesus came back from like a missionary thing where he was preaching and teaching for hours, and he was exhausted. The disciples were exhausted, and you can look at the book of Mark to see the backstory. And he was so exhausted. So he gets on the boat and he's like, disciples, let's go to the other side, away from the crowd. Let's go relax, recuperate, rest a little bit. So they get in the boat, they go to the other side, and they go to a city called Bethsaida. That's not the pool. By the way, Jews like to use the same names. I don't know why. Like the pool of Bethsaida, another city called Bethsaida. So it's a different place. If we're going to look at the map real quick. Okay, do you guys see where it says Bethsaida right there? In white, do you see the Galilee? That's where Jesus went. And there's actually a church there, the Church of Multiplication. I've been to it, it's really good. They created a church where Jesus did the feeding of the 5,000. And so he goes from this area and he just crosses over. So basically, can we look at the other pictures too? This is the church. I wanted to share that with you guys. This is the church that they created over the place of the feeding. Next picture, please. That's inside the church. Next picture. Do you see the little loaves and bread? Next picture. Third, right? So they're very known to create every holy place in Israel. They created a church there. Yeah. So they go to the other side, and Jesus is thinking, I'm going to go with my disciples. I'm going to get some rest. But that's not what happened. The people were stalking Jesus. They literally went on foot. Jesus went in a boat to the other side, and the people followed him on foot. And they got there even before Jesus got there. And when Jesus got there, he went over a hill. It says mountain, but it's more like a hill. It's just an area that's above. And he was with his disciples, and he literally looked up, and he just saw the crowd coming up to the hill with him. And this is the thing. What did Jesus do when the crowd came? He was exhausted, guys. He hasn't eaten. He hasn't drank any water. He's really tired. He's been going and teaching. Have you ever been so tired, like working 12-hour shifts, and you're like, I don't want to see anyone. I want to get in my sweatpants and watch some Netflix and eat some ramen noodle. Like, Jesus didn't have that. Like, the best thing he could have done is just go on a mountain, like, and lay there. And the people were following him. But instead of Jesus rolling his eyes and sending them away and running the other side, he had compassion. Even though he was so tired, he had compassion. The Bible says he had compassion on them. He welcomed them. And he knew that they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he's like, I'm going to take care of my people. And he started teaching them. He started to teach them about the kingdom of God. It says he taught them about many things. And he sat with them. And he he continued to heal all the sick and the people that needed cure for anything. He continued to work, him and his disciples. And then the disciples come to him and say, Jesus, we're tired, it's getting late, it's dark. Send them away. Let them go back to their towns and get some food because it's getting real dark here. And remember, this place was a very deserted area. Very deserted. We're talking like there's nothing within walking distance. So they would have had to walk so long to even get to the next town. And it was dark. It's dangerous. And so they're like, let them go, tell them to leave. And Jesus said, no, I'm not going to do that. You give them something to eat. Imagine if somebody comes to you and is like, imagine if you go to someone, he's like, hey, we're running out of something, food or whatever. And you're like, okay, make it happen. Like, where can we, seriously, Jesus, what? Give them something to eat. Like, we don't have anything to give them. And then he asks Philip, one of his disciples, where can we go to get bread for these people? Basically, what can you do? What can we do to figure this situation and problem out? And Jesus was asking an impossible question because he knew it's a deserted place. Ain't nobody has any food. They don't have no money. Like, there's nothing anybody could have done. And it was getting dark, and there's 5,000 men. Do you know how many people were there? 5,000 men. With the women and children, there was between 12 to 20,000 people. And Jesus was asking Philip that question because he wanted to test him. When I read this, I'm like, Jesus, you has some kind of sense of humor. Like, when everybody's tired and hungry, and you're still I'm like, maybe don't test him right now. This is not the right time. But you know what? This is what I feel like. Isn't it the best time to test someone is when they're tired and hungry? When they're not in the good state of mind? Because then you can get to see their true self under pressure, right? Remember, he didn't tempt him to sin. He tested him. There's a difference. A lot of people get that mixed. Jesus can test you. He doesn't tempt you. So I just want to let you guys know the difference here. And Jesus had already a plan. So he was testing him, what can we do? But Jesus already knew what he was going to do. And just as what Philip said, even if we had 200 denarii, it wouldn't be enough to buy food for all these people. He's doing all the math. We don't even have 200 denarii, and it wouldn't even be enough. And then Jesus says, what do you have? Okay, you don't have 200 denarii. What do you actually have? Go and find out. See, a lot of times we want to jump into a conclusion of I just don't have enough. We're done. Goodbye, next. No. You don't have enough, but what do you actually have? Even if it's not enough, what do you have? Let's go actually find out the fact of what we have. They didn't even think to ask, hey guys, anybody here has food? Let's collect the food around us. Because they thought it was impossible. So did they quit? And a lot of times we quit. As soon as we face something that sounds very impossible, the first thing we do is just, okay, next, we quit, we're done. No. Don't quit. Dig a little. Let's see what you do have. How can we make this work? Don't jump into a conclusion. And this is what Andrew does. Andrew is Peter's brother, and he says, hey, hold on a second. There is a boy, and he has 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. Very small. It says also small fishes. Not much, right? What can we really do? He says, but there's no point because it's not much to feed anyone, but that's all we have. And what did Jesus say? He didn't say, okay, forget it. He said, go get it. Go get it. Jesus, it doesn't even matter. If you're going to perform a miracle, why don't you just perform it without forget the 5 loaves and the fish, just make it happen without it. And Jesus says, no, go get what you have. Even if it's not much and it's little, go get it. Because I'm going to do something with the little that you have. See, a lot of times we want God to create things out of nothing. And I can tell you from experience, that's not usually how he works. He loves to thrift, thrifting. Anybody into thrifting? Take something old and make it new. Jesus just, no, he's into making wine, new wineskins, into making, wineskins, not whiteskins. He's into making things new, like Jesus, who cares about the 5 loaves and 2 fishes? Just forget it. You're going to send Andrew or whoever to go get it. Guys, there's 20,000 people. Imagine having to go through the crowds to even fetch the fish and the loaves. But Jesus says, no, we're going to wait. because I want to do something with the little that we have. I don't want to create something out of nothing, which he can. Which he actually does. But he still uses the little that we have. And then he asks the disciples, sit down. Sit down and let everybody here sit down. I want all the people to sit down. And this is the thing, guys. The disciples at this point did not know that Jesus was going to perform a miracle, right? All they heard is, people are hungry, send them away. No, we're not going to send them away. What do you have? We have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. And then Jesus says, go tell everybody to sit down. He didn't tell them he didn't tell them the plan. So imagine how they felt. What? We're going to go tell the people to sit down? First of all, they're in charge, they're 12, and they're in charge of, let's say, 12,000 or 20,000. Even if we said, okay, let's look at the lowest number, 12,000. That's 1,000 per disciple. Imagine if I told you to be in charge of 1,000 people. Go make them sit down in groups of 50 to 100. Imagine how long that would take. Have you ever tried to get a large group of people to cooperate? Have you ever been there, like in a concert? Guys, it's nearly impossible. They will trample upon you. They're talking, they're not listening. It's extremely loud, it's sweaty, it's smelly, people are just not listening to you. You can't even get by the way, I have a mic. They didn't have a mic back then. They had to yell and nobody was listening. They don't listen to the instructions, That's how they felt. Okay, now we have to go and make all these people sit down. And on top of it, they didn't even understand. Jesus, hold on a second. Didn't we say we're going to send them home? Why are we making them sit down? We have no food. I have no idea what you're doing right now. But guess what? They didn't understand what Jesus was doing, but they still did it. They obeyed him, even though they're like, I totally do not agree. I'm tired, and these people need to go. They still obeyed him. Have you ever been in that position where your boss or your pastor, your leader, your spouse, your parent tells you to do something you totally think is ridiculous, that you totally don't agree, but you do it anyways? And you're like, okay, I'll do it, but I'm going to be waiting because you're going to see it's not going to work. Have you ever been there? I've been there. I told my husband, just trust me on this. But babe, it's not going to work. Just trust me on this. Just trust me on this. Have you been there? Gee, that's what Jesus said. Just trust me. Go tell them to sit down. And they're like, okay, we're about to sit here for a long period hungry. It's not going to work, Jesus. And what about that boy? He probably was like, okay, I'm not going to see my food again. He's like, what's happening? Then Jesus takes the loaves and the fishes, and he looks up to heaven, and he gives thanks, and he blesses the food. That's all he does. Takes them. He thanks God for them. God, thank you for these 5 loaves and 2 fishes. I bless them. And he starts breaking them in his hands. Can I tell you something today? There is power in thanksgiving. There's power in blessing what you have. Instead of complaining about what we don't have, Jesus didn't say, God, we don't have food. God, this is all we have. Please fill our need. We need you to feed all these people. Look at them. Have mercy on us. No, he didn't do that. He just took what he had and he thanked God for what he had and he blessed it. Sometimes we just need to thank God for what we have and bless it.
That's good.
And God will multiply what we have because we're thankful instead of complaining about what we don't have. And he broke the bread and the fish. That word stuck to me. When it said he broke the bread and the fish. He didn't have to break anything, right? He could have just placed the bread and there would be enough because he's Jesus. And I wondered, I'm like, Jesus, why do you have to break the bread? There is enough for everyone. Actually, when we read it, there was leftovers. And I just felt like part of multiplication is being broken. It's when God breaks it in half. It's when you feel like you're being pressed in your personal life, you're being broken inside, is when God works through you the most. God is in the business of breaking, but not in a bad way. In breaking so you can be more like him and less like your old self. He makes something new. He takes the old and he makes you new. And when Jesus broke the bread, it multiplied. And he kept breaking a little piece and it became more and more and more. And he gave it to the disciples and he said, go and distribute it to everyone. And they started to give it to people. Imagine how it went. Jesus takes the basket and he prays and breaks it. And then takes more and breaks it. And he takes more and the more he breaks, the more bread happens, like pieces of bread starting to happen more and more as he breaks it piece by piece. Everybody thinks he's crazy and it won't be enough, but they go with it. But you know what happened? A miracle happened. Everyone ate bread and fish until they were satisfied and filled. Every single one of those 12 to 20,000 people, which by the way is a village. I don't even know if I've ever been around 20,000 people in my life. Have I? I don't know. Like, it's so many people. And you know what's amazing? Jesus didn't just fill a need. The disciples weren't like, okay guys, we're gonna give you some food, but everybody has to wait in line and you can only have half a piece of bread and 6 ounces of fish. And you can't have seconds and you gotta wait till everybody eats before we know if you can come for more. Have you ever been to those buffets where you go to a buffet so you can have as much as you want, right? But have you ever been to those buffets and like banquets where they're actually putting the food in your plate instead of you grabbing it? I do not like those. Like, seriously, this is a buffet. Like, what is happening here? If I wanted somebody to serve me, I would have gone to a restaurant. That's when you know there's not enough food going around. You might not go to seconds because they want to make sure there's enough for any, and I'm not shaming anyone, I'm just being real. Like, you know, and Jesus is not saying that. Jesus broke and have as much as you want. They could have as much as they want. Food was coming, more food was coming, more food was coming. And the Bible says they all ate, all of them ate until they were satisfied. Until they were like, oh, I feel full now. There was so much food that they even had leftovers. Like, seriously. They had more food at the end than they had in the beginning. They had 12 baskets of leftovers. That's a lot. They started with like, what, half a basket? And they ended up with 12. Because Jesus is not a God of poverty. Jesus is not a God of lack. Jesus is not a God, and listen to that, he's not the God of just enough. I'm going to have just enough. And that's it. He is a God of abundance, and you can have seconds, and you can have thirds. And I'm not saying gluttony here. They walked a lot, just FYI. You know, they walked a lot, and they would go days hungry, so it's okay for them to have the seconds. I'm talking spiritually here. Seconds and thirds and fourths. You want dreams? You want visions? You want to see heaven? You want to see Jesus? I'm saying, why not? Ask him. Ask him to see these things. You can have seconds and thirds. You can have as much time with Jesus as you want. You want to speak in tongues? You want to be able to prophesy? You want to be able to lay hands and heal the sick? Ask Jesus for it. Ask for the gifts. There's so many gifts in the Bible. Ask for it. He's a God of abundance. He's not a God of lack. And he shows us in this story, there was leftovers. And you know what's really also interesting? He's not a God of waste. He asked for the remaining stuff to be collected. Why? He can always make more. But he cares about those because he's like, no, we're going to need it for the next day. We're going to collect it. I'm not wasting food. So for all you people that go to restaurants, be like, oh, no, I don't need a to-go box. Hey, Jesus is a to-go box kind of person. Like, he loves not wasting food. And by the way, 12 baskets leftovers is not a lot compared to 12,000 or 20,000 people. He could have had 200 baskets leftovers, but he only had 12 because he made enough and abundance, but also not a waste. Because he knew if he would have made more and more and more, it would have been wasted and nobody was going to be blessed. Now it would have been wasteful. And if you're not going to consume it, God's not going to make it. He's not going to make bread and fish if it's not going to be consumed. And it's going to be wasted. What happens to bread when you leave it in a basket for a long time? It gets moldy and old and dry. It's not good. You toss it away. He's a God of abundance, but not of waste. He wasn't going to perform a miracle to multiply bread and fish to bless people who were not going to consume the blessing. God has a lot in store for us. God has a lot in store for you, but are you ready to consume it? This story is very beautiful. It shows the power of Jesus and his heart, but it also shows you that Jesus is not limited to anything. Let me tell you something. Without Jesus, you are limited. You are limited. You are limited to your body. Come on now. Without Jesus, you are limited to your body. Without Jesus, you are limited to your experiences. You are limited to your education. You are limited to the facts. There is no impossible without Jesus. The doctors will just tell you the diagnosis and that's that. There is no, I pray for you and I believe in you. Without Jesus, there is no hope. Without Jesus, you're limited to your resources, your bank account. That's it. If you have $5, that's it. If you have 100,000, that's it. You are limited to your network, your friends. Without Jesus, you are limited to your family. You are limited to whatever the situation that you're facing. You are limited without Jesus. But with Jesus, you are not limited at all. He does impossible things for us. Everything is possible with Jesus. Everything is, and I say everything. You know what everything means? It means every single thing that is not possible can be possible. It means old people having children. It means people healing from cancer. It means struggles gone. It means emotional healing, mental healing. It means diagnosis being gone. It means disorders being gone. It means somebody, it's all possible. Someone who doesn't have a lot of money, no education, making it. It means that you can get favor and know people you shouldn't be knowing. It's endless. It's all possible with Jesus. It means a dead person can come back to life. It is possible with Jesus. All of it is possible with Jesus. He can take what you have that's so little and turn it into abundance. He can take the lack and turn it to more. He can take your just enough and make it overflow. It doesn't mean that every single thing you're going to face and every issue you have will go away. I'm not saying that every issue, guys, like that would be really nice. I would love that. But no, that's not. Following Jesus doesn't mean that every problem will be solved, that everything will be gone. No, it just means you will be blessed while it's still happening. You'll make it through. He'll be right there. And some things he will remove and some things not yet, but you will have him and you will be blessed. But first, you have to give him what you have. And he will take it and make more of it. What you have. What do you have? See, this is the boy. The boy. I want to ask you, what did you think that boy thought about? He gave the disciples and Jesus all he had. He had 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. He could have been like, I'm not giving my family meal away. We're hungry, right? But he was okay with sharing, not knowing if he would eat or not. I guarantee you he did not think Jesus was going to perform a miracle. But you know what I really think that boy did? I think that boy said, I don't know if I'm going to be eating today, but that man is worth it. I trust him. He's good. That man, so he's good. I can trust him. So whatever happens, even if I don't eat, I'm okay because I'm just with him. I think that's what happened. And he gave it away. He didn't hoard it. He gave everything away. And Jesus took those 5 pieces of bread and 2 fishes and fed everybody, and there was leftovers. God can do so much with you, but the first step is to let him in and give him yourself. Give him what you have. Give him you. Give him yourself. Imagine what he could do with you. Look at what he did with the bread and the fish. Imagine what he could do with you. Give him your time. He can do so much with your time. Give him your resources. Give him your gifts and talent, and he will change your life. And you could say, well, but I don't really have a lot. I just don't have much. You guys saw what Jesus did with not that much, right? He did miracles with the not much. He's a God of blessing and multiplication. He is a good steward of anything you give him. It's in good hands. What you have is enough for Jesus. Those 5 loaves and 2 fishes was enough for Jesus. It will be overflowing, not just enough. He will overflow your life. And you know what? I'm glad that some of us don't have enough. You know why? Because if we did, we wouldn't need God. But now he's going to take what's not enough and he's going to overflow it. Where before, if we had enough, we would just have enough. But now we can have more than enough. You might be thinking, I don't have a lot of time. How can I give God time? I don't have a lot of time. Guys, God can do so much more with your 5 to 10 minutes a day spending time with him, reading the Bible, praying for 10 minutes, than an hour once a week. Just give him that 10 minutes. I don't know. We don't have to be religious. Like, if it's not an hour a day, I'm not going to do it. It's not worth it. Who said it's not worth it? Who lied to you and said 10 minutes is not worth it? Why are you living in shame? If you only have 10 minutes to read the Bible, okay, read the Bible for 10 minutes. God can do so much more in 10 minutes than you think he can do. He will change your life within 10 minutes. You know, I really want to challenge you today. We need to stop living in the all or nothing mentality. Have you ever been there? All or nothing? All or nothing. I'm either going to read the Bible every day for an hour, or I'm not going to read it. I'm going to the gym every day, or I'm not going to gym. I'm going on a diet, eating healthy. I'm removing all the and then you crash 2 days later. Like, it's not sustainable. God wants those little things. Give him your not enough. He's in the business of doing something important and big. He will overflow your life with the not enough. Imagine if that boy said, I don't have enough. I'm not going to give Jesus the 5 loaves and 2 fishes. I don't know what would have happened to the story. Like, I really don't. Like, thank God he didn't do that. But imagine if he would have said, it's worthless. My 5 fishes and 2 fishes is not enough for all these people. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to keep quiet. We need to stop living life tomorrow, next day. It's going to happen next day. Guys, do you know that there is not a guarantee for tomorrow? Who of us can keep our heart beating right now? Are you doing anything to keep your heart beating? Right? I can drop down dead right now. Like, I don't have control over myself to keep myself alive. So there is no tomorrow. Do it today. What do you have today? What do you have today? What do you have today? What's in your hands today? What's in your heart today? What's in your mind today? What time do you have today? You might be thinking, well, I don't have a lot of money. You know what? Be generous. Continue to be generous, even if you don't have much. God will take your little and make amazing things. He is in the business of multiplication. Continue to be generous, because if you wait till you have money, you'll never have enough. Get plugged in. Get plugged in a community. Get plugged in church. Start serving. Even once a month is better than nothing. Get in that mentality of giving you're not enough. God can do something with it. God can do so much more with your Sabbath than not having one. If you work 7 days a week, I want to challenge you to take a day off, because God can do so much more with one less day than what you can do in 7 days. He promised he would. Because less physically might just mean a lot more spiritually. So today, what do you have? And I have a question. What do you do? What's your first instinct when you are faced with an obstacle that's impossible? When you have a need and a desire, but you're faced with a situation that says, impossible, it's not going to happen. What do? What's your first instinct? Run away? Hide? Isolate? Get angry? Drink? I don't know. I want you guys to know that Jesus is not asking you to do a miracle. He's not asking you to fix the problem that you're facing. He's asking you to be with him, and he'll do it for you. With and for you. He's asking you to partner with him. See, Jesus, when he talked to Philip, did you guys notice something when he talked to Philip? He didn't say, what do you? He said, what do we? He said, where can we go buy food? He didn't say, where can you go buy food? Where can we? So when you face something and you go to Jesus, he's not saying, okay, what are you going to do about it? He's saying, okay, son, daughter, what are we going to do about it? He's with you in the situation. He's part of the community. Jesus is here right now. He's part of our church. The whole church is because of Jesus. This is his church. You know what I mean? It's a we. It's not a you. He's not asking you to do the miracle. He's going to do the miracle. He's asking you to be with him while he does it. But first, he asks Philip to find a solution. Why does Jesus do that? He knows that there's no solution. That's a tricky question. Why did he do that? I believe there's 4 reasons why he does that. Because many of us, this is true. Many of us, when we're faced with something, our first instinct is to pray, which is nothing wrong with that. But God is saying, okay, guys, let's keep it real here. Some of our issues has nothing to do with me. You can totally fix it on your own. We do not need a miracle for this. And God wants us to know that he created us with a beautiful mind, a beautiful body, and a beautiful hand, and beautiful feet. We can create and do things and solve problems. He created with a beautiful mind to solve problems. So he wants us to use our problem-solving skills first. And see if this is a situation that we, as his children, can fix it, or is that something that is impossible for us to fix? So that's the first thing. Before you jump to a conclusion and want God to do it for you, how about think, maybe we can do something about it? You know, when a lot of people say, well, people need to know about Jesus. Yeah. Hello. Plant a church. Put some reels up about Jesus. Go evangelizing. Let's solve the problem. What do you think? Why do you think we're here? Like, the solution is with us. It's not about Jesus just showing up to people. We need to partner with God. There's a lot of things that we can do on our own that Jesus is like, hey, I'm going to go with you. But this is all you. You can do it. I created you in my image, and I gave you the ability to fix the problem. The second thing, he wanted them to realize that this situation is impossible and that God is needed here. Now, this situation they can't solve on their own. Third thing, he wanted them not to disregard what they had, the 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He wants to make sure that everybody knows, hey, don't disregard the small things you have. Even if it's not enough in your eyes, I want you to use it. I'm going to do something with your not enough. And then the last thing, the fourth thing, is he wanted them to grow in their faith, because he wanted them to see firsthand God doing an amazing miracle and see that there's nothing impossible for him and that he gets the glory alone, because it was impossible. You know, I feel like the more I meet people, there's a poverty mentality on us. Do you agree? Like a poverty mentality, like hoarding. I want it for myself. I don't want to share. I got there. If you get there, I don't know, like when people make it big or in the industry, it's like they forget all their friends. They don't want to like connect with people and share network. And it's like, why are you hoarding people? Like, you know how hard it is to get there. Or like when people become, you know, they're becoming well off, they don't want to help their, I'm not saying give everything away, but they don't want to help, you know, their friends in need. Or it's just there is this or people who are literally successful who only want more and more. It's like it's never enough. It's this poverty spirit cloud on people. I see it everywhere. But the question is, do we know the God we serve? Or just we forget because we're flawed, we're humans. But I want to tell you today, if you accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you're royalty. He calls us children. We are royalty. It doesn't matter how much we make and what we know and who we know. We don't care. We know Jesus. That's the most important thing, you know? We are royalty. But the problem is we accept Jesus, but our old mentality is still there. We still live under that same mentality of what we grew up with. If we didn't have enough food, now we want to hoard food. If we didn't have enough friends, now we want to, you know, be accepted by everyone. Those wounds are still there, and God is saying it's time to be healed. I have more for you. I have abundance. You don't need to hoard anything. You don't need to hoard anything. You can share. You can trust me. Give me what you have and I'll take it. I'm a good investor. I'll take what you have, the little you have, and I'll bring it back more. If you haven't accepted Jesus, though, things are impossible. And things are limited. And you're going to be a slave to whatever is Lord in your life. But the good news is you can accept him. And if you haven't, you can accept him today. You can just simply say, Jesus, forgive me for my sins. I accept you in my heart. And I want to follow you. And that's it. You just got to open your mouth and tell him. Because when you accept him, you have inheritance. When you accept him, you will have unconditional love. He loves you unconditionally anyways, even if you don't accept him, but you can feel it heavily when you accept him. When you accept him, there's no fear. What's the worst that could ever happen? What's the worst that could ever happen to us? We die. But what does it mean for us as people who follow Jesus when we die? It just means we're with him. If we get sick, God can heal. If we lose our job, God can give you another one. If you're lonely, he can make you have friends. If you need to succeed at something, he can make somebody notice you that would never notice you before. I've been in circles I should never have been in. I worked not a day in my life to get into that circles. It was completely God. But the thing is, I get into the circle, I have a good time, I do my thing, and I leave. It doesn't define me. Because God gets all the credit. He's the one who did it. I didn't do anything. And there are things that I've worked for, yes. But I'm talking about those specifically because I want you to know when you accept Jesus, he works all things for your good. You are made royal, your children. He will give you an abundance and everything will be possible. And as the worship team come up, I want to ask you today, what is it today? What is that area? What is that area that you need God's overflow in? Think about it. What is that area that you need God to overflow in your heart in? Is it physically? Is it emotionally? Is it in finances? You need him to overflow? Maybe you have so little. Is it a spouse? You're like, you know what? I keep mingling. I'm not meeting anyone. I really want to get married. I want to have a family. Is it a physical healing? Is it a struggle that you're struggling with? That you can't break away from? Is it age? Do you feel old? Like God is done with you because of your age. By the way, God is never done with you, ever. Age is not just, it's just a number. You know what age is? It means how long you've lived on this earth. Like how old is your physical body? That's all it is. God did, the amazing thing is a lot of things in the Bible, it's with older people. Moses was 80 years old. Abraham had a kid when he was 100. Like God works with amazing, wiser, older people, and God is never, ever done with you. And if you feel too young, you're not. God can use young people too. He will multiply you. Multiply your gifting. What is it? Is it a mental health issue? Is it an emotional trauma? What is it? Is it a disorder that you want to hide and don't want anybody to know about? What do you need overflowing in? Do you want to have a family and you're not there yet? Do you want to go to school and you can't afford it? You're trying to succeed at something and you're not getting. Is it loneliness? Give him what you have and he will do the rest. He will multiply everything you give him. You are not a slave to whatever it is that you're facing. I want you to know that no matter what you're facing today, your struggle, and how long you've been through it, because some of us have been there years. It doesn't matter what it is and how long you've been facing it. You are not a slave to it. You're not in poverty. You can go through pain and have abundance at the same time. Do you guys know that? Do you know that these people that God fed, that Jesus fed, the 20,000, that same day had to walk home in the dark? That next day they probably woke up and I don't know if they had enough to eat. You can still have abundance and blessing through pain and struggle. Because abundance doesn't mean enough material stuff. Abundance, it means you have an overflow of joy inside your heart no matter what you go through. Life continues. But you have to shift your identity from poverty to royalty, from poverty to royalty, from poverty to royalty. And once your mind is shifted, everything can still be the same, but you won't. You will see life differently. You will feel life differently. You will heal people differently. You will be changed forever because your mindset is changed. You know, a lot of times I suffer for things that I didn't create in my life. It was things that maybe my parents or my upbringing or the place I was born created it for me, right? And nothing changed, but I did. Jesus came into my life and he said I was royalty. So I don't have to live in that slavery of the past, of where I was born, of what happened to me when I was growing up, all the harassments and bullying and all the things that I've been through that maybe my body still has scars from. But my mind shifted. Instead of blaming the whole world for everything I've been through, I thank God that I'm still here. And I thank God that I can share my story and encourage other people. So today I want us to close our eyes. If you can close your eyes. Our worship team is amazing. They can play without their eyes open. I want you to imagine a beautiful golden bowl made out of gold. But the golden bowl has cracks in it. And I want you to remember all the things that cracked you, all the things that hurt you. Those are the cracks in the bowl, and you are the bowl. But I also want you to imagine it's overflowing with whatever it is that you need overflowing with. You can think about it as a mist, as water, whatever it is. Notice that the bowl is made out of gold because you are made out of gold. You know what happens when you put heat in the bowl? Gold melts and mends the cracks. The cracks might never 100% disappear, but they will mend and they will heal. That's what God does. He will heal the cracks in your life. There will still be some scars, but it will be healed. And you are made out of gold. No matter what happens to that bowl, it's still made out of gold. No matter how much the bowl is beaten and cracked, it's still royalty. Imagine that bowl overflowing, overflowing, overflowing. That's what God wants us to do. Jesus wants to overflow in our lives in abundance. It's time to say no to poverty and receive our inheritance, our royalty. You are royalty. You accepted Jesus. Break down the chains. He has abundance for you. Give Him what you have. Surrender to Him so He can overflow in your life. So as we worship today, I want you to think about all these areas that you need abundance in, and allow Jesus in to change your mentality and shift you from poverty to royalty, because that's truly who you are.